In this video, you will learn how to graph linear equations from slope-intercept form. An equation is said to be in slope-intercept form when it's in the form of y equals mx plus b, where m is the slope of the line and b is the y-intercept, and then x and y are both variables. When it's in slope-intercept form, we can easily figure out what the slope of the line is and what the y-intercept is. The slope is 2 because it's the number in front of the x. And the y-intercept is 3, or the point 0, 3. Now let's try the line y equals 1/2 x minus 6. The slope of this line is 1/2, and the y-intercept is -6, or the point 0, -6. Next, let's try y equals x plus 2. This one might look like it doesn't have a slope because it doesn't have a number before the x. But whenever there's just an x by itself, remember that the number in front is actually a 1. So the slope in this case is 1. And then because it says plus 2, the y-intercept is 2, or the point 0, 2. Finally, let's try y equals -3x plus 1. The slope of this line is -3. See how if you go from left to right, the line slopes downwards. That's because it's negative. And the y-intercept is 1, or the point 0, 1. Now we're going to try writing an equation by ourselves based on the line on a graph. Example number 1. We have this line that goes through the points A and B. We can find the slope by finding a point and counting the rise and the run to another point. If we count our rise and our run, we see that we go up 6 and over 3. And we see that the line goes up to the right, so this slope is positive. 6/3 can be simplified to 2. Next, we need to find the y-intercept. That is the place where the line crosses the y-axis. If we look carefully, we can see that that is the point 0, -3. And now we're ready to start writing the equation. Start with the slope. Remember, it's in the form y equals mx plus b, or y equals slope x. So our slope was 2, so we can start with y equals 2x, and the y-intercept is 0, -3. So we're going to use the -3 part of that. Now we have y equals 2x minus 3. If we were to have put plus 3, then the line would be crossing the y-axis above the origin at 0, +3. So be careful and make sure that you use your signs correctly. For our second example, we have this line going through the point C and the point B. So we need to find our slope. Start by counting the rise and the run. To get from point C to B, we have to go up 2 spaces and right 3 spaces. Slope is in the form rise over run, so our slope here is 2 over 3, or 2/3. And the y-intercept is at the point C. That point is 0, 1. So we'll use the 1 for the equation. Our equation is y equals 2/3 x plus 1. Notice the positive 1 because it's above the origin, or 0, 0. We use positive, or plus 1. The line in example 1 crossed the y-axis below the origin, below 0, 0. So we used negative in that situation. Example number 3, we have this line going through points D and point E. It looks like it goes down to the right, so our slope is going to be negative in this case. Counting the rise and the run from point D to E, we have to go down 4 and to the right 2. But that can be simplified to -2. And the y-intercept of this equation is 0, -4. Now you'll notice there's not a point that we drew a line through on 0, -4. There's no dot, but there still is a point there, even though there's not a dot there. Every spot on a line is a point. But this is also where it's very important to use a ruler or some kind of straight edge, because if your line is not perfectly straight, you're not going to be going through the y-axis at the correct spot. Always use a ruler when you're drawing a line. Now for our equation, we can write y equals negative 2x minus 4. Minus because it goes through the y-axis at negative 4, not positive 4. Now we're going to try going the opposite direction. We're going to start with an equation and graph the line. Example number 4, y equals 3/4 x minus 2. The slope is 3/4, and the y-intercept I can see on the equation is negative 2, or at the point 0, negative 2. So the first thing we're actually going to do is graph the y-intercept. So here's a point on 0, negative 2. Now the next step is we need to use the slope to find the next point. So the slope is 3/4, rise over run. So rise is 3 and run is 4. So from this point that we're at right now, the 0, negative 2, we're going to go up 3 and over to the right 4. So there's our next point. Now we can find another point if possible. So I'm going to go up another 3 and over another 4. Let's see if we can fit that on this graph. Okay, so this graph is not quite big enough to be able to put the next point on there, but we can go down 3 and left 4 to put another point on. There we go. So these points should be in a nice straight line. If you end up having one that's kind of off to the side or doesn't fit on a straight line, then something's wrong. So you'll need to go back and start over. Now that we have 2 or 3 points on our graph, we can go ahead and draw the line using a ruler or some kind of straight edge. Your line should look just like this. Notice you can see where the y-intercept is. It's at 0, negative 2 because it goes through the y-axis at negative 2. And if you go to the line and try to find the slope, you can see that you go up 3 and over 4. So this equation matches the line. Example number 5, y equals 2x plus 3. Now this one at first seems a little bit tricky because the slope is 2. So remember, slope is in the form of rise over run. So it appears that this slope doesn't have either a rise or a run. It doesn't have one of those. But actually it does. If you put it in a fraction form, 2 over 1 is the same as 2. So the rise is 2 and the run is 1. Then the y-intercept is 3. And because it says plus 3, that means it's positive. So the line is going to cross the y-axis at positive 3. Now we can go ahead and start plotting points. The first one you want to put on the graph is the y-intercept, 0, 3. From that point, we use the slope to go up 2, right 1. Now at 1, 5, I can't go up any higher on this particular graph. There's definitely points up there, but I can't fit another up 2 over 1 on here. So we can go back to 0, 3 and go down 2 and left 1. Now we have 3 points on the line, so we could go ahead and draw our line with a straight edge here, but I want to show you that you can also continue to put more points on the graph. This just helps you get a really solid vision of what the line is going to look like before you actually draw the line. Now, even though it looks like, oh, I can probably freehand that, don't freehand your line. Still use a ruler or a straight edge. And this is what your line should look like for the equation y equals 2x plus 3. Final example number 6, y equals negative 1/4 x. Our slope is that red number right there, negative 1/4. But the equation is supposed to be in the form y equals mx plus b, where m is the slope and b is the y-intercept. And I don't see a plus b. That's because it's just 0. So this line is going to be passing through the origin of the graph at 0, 0. We want to start by putting a point on the y-intercept. So the point is 0, 0. From that point, we need to use the slope to figure out where the next point is. Now this slope is negative, so that means it's going to go down to the right. So I can go down 1 and right 4. It's not a very steep looking slope, but the reason for that is because it's a pretty small number. 1/4 or negative 1/4 is pretty close to 0. The closer the number is to 0, the less steep the slope is going to be. Now that we've put all the points on the graph that we can fit, we can go ahead and draw the line with a straight edge or a ruler. This is what your line should look like. Now you should know how to graph linear equations from slope-intercept form. Thanks for watching.